Although the media world seems to predominantly be concerned with the various goings-on in Russia at the moment, there is another country that is receiving more and more journalistic scrutiny. If the allegations that have been made against this country are true, then this country may very well, through the use of both hacking and manipulation of online opinion, play a serious part in not only the next UK general election, but the presidential election in the United States. We're, of course, talking about China. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the allegations leveled at the Chinese government, the evidence to support these claims, and just exactly what the ramifications might be if these accusations turn out to be true. Now, in order to properly explain all of this, it's necessary to take a short journey back in time. On the 13th of January 2010, Google issued a statement saying that it had been the victim of an extremely sophisticated cyber attack. According to Dmitry Alperovich, the then vice president of threat research for McAfee, the attackers used nearly a dozen pieces of malware and several levels of encryption to burrow deeply into the bowels of company networks and obscure their activity. The encryption was highly successful in obfuscating the attack and avoiding common detection methods. We haven't seen encryption at this level. It was highly sophisticated. Now, even back in 2010, this kind of covert espionage by the Chinese government was not new. In fact, about 33 other US companies were involved. However, up to this point, companies had remained largely silent on the matter, preferring instead to deal with matters in-house, as it were, rather than risking the inevitable loss of public trust that such a breach would bring about. In going public, although Google never actually directly accused the Chinese government at that point, they certainly gave the press the opportunity to do so, and do so they did. For a long time after that, pretty much every non-Chinese news company on the planet happily lambasted China, its government, and its tech firms. After all, they had compromised the security of Google, the world's favorite search engine. I mean, what else would they be prepared to do? In 2012, Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Rogers even appeared on 60 Minutes during a time when many people were starting to doubt Chinese-made telecommunications equipment to say, find another vendor than Huawei if you care about your intellectual property, if you care about your consumers' privacy, and you care about the national security of the United States of America. Now, we are by no means saying that either the press or the United States government behaved inappropriately. Almost everything that China had been accused of would later turn out to be true. However, it is a sad fact that whenever an organization, be that press or political, begins to spout such concentrated righteous indignation at any one target, then they are often, not always, but often, engaging in that most famous of magician's tricks: look over there, not over here. In 2014, following revelations made by former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden, it turns out that the United States government had been doing exactly this. An article published by The Guardian on the 22nd of March 2014 stated that the National Security Agency created backdoors into networks maintained by the Chinese telecommunications company Huawei. Sadly, for the United States government, this, along with the thousands of other documents released by Snowden, quickly dispelled the elaborately constructed illusion that China were the only bad guys when it came to hacking. This inconvenient truth may very well have permanently diverted attention away from China if it were not for the events of 2015. In July of that year, the US Office of Personnel Management announced that the private records of more than 22 million American civil servants had been stolen. Although the American government did not officially blame the Chinese, several of its security analysts were not so diplomatic. One government employee told Vice that, quote, "I think the intelligence community feels pretty confident that we know who is involved." When asked to explain what was taken, he said, SF-86 and SF-85s, which are the standard forms which employees fill out to obtain security clearances. On those forms, you had a lot of proprietary information about you, about the people that you live with, your social security number, your date of birth, what schools you went to, your employment history. Basically, a lot of personally identifiable information that we consider to be extremely sensitive. When asked just how damaging this was, he went on to say that the data contained within these forms could be used to target United States government employees for many, many years to come. From then until now, blame has been passed back and forth between China and pretty much every country in the Western world. However, recent claims made by both the British and the United States governments seem to indicate that China has taken hacking well beyond corporate espionage and mass data gathering and is now attempting to artificially alter the structure of politics. Throughout the Western cybersecurity community, the acronym APT, or Advanced Persistent Threat, is used to identify hacking groups which have been proven to be linked to foreign governments. According to Mandiant, an American cybersecurity company, there are currently about 40 of these groups, at least 20 20 of which are believed to be linked with China. So, why is this significant? Well, one of these China-linked groups, APT31, has spent quite a lot of time in the headlines recently. Now, before we get into what they may or may not have done, let's first find out who they are. APT31, also referred to on occasion as Zirconium, is believed to have been formed at some point during 2010. Although to the casual observer they appear to be nothing more than an IT business operating under the name Wuhan Zhuruzhen Science and Technology Company, they were, in fact, a sophisticated, well-organized group of state-sponsored intelligence officers and contract hackers. Over the years, they appear to have racked up a quite impressive number of high-profile hits. Not only were they responsible for a massive breach of Microsoft mail servers in 2021, the significance of which we shall return to shortly, but according to the website ENISA, the EU cybersecurity agency, quote, in 2020, the Norwegian Police Security Service, PST, conducted a 2.5 year investigation of a 2018 cyber attack against the Norwegian state administration and the cloud services provider Visma AG. According to public news, the threat actor behind the attacks was APT31. The Parliament of Finland had fallen victim to a breach in December 2020. In March 2021, the Finnish national authorities disclosed that their investigations pointed to APT31. These claims would be officially verified in March 2024. In July of 2021, the French cybersecurity agency ANSSI warned of an ongoing campaign by the APT31 threat actor against a large number of French organizations. So, as you can see, they've been rather busy. But as far as we can ascertain, and keep in mind that this is a developing story with new information coming out every day, the group's most serious transgressions have involved hacking into the email accounts of high-ranking United States political officials. It was these crimes that led to the United States charging 7 Chinese hackers with conspiracy to commit computer intrusions and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. But how and why did they do this? Through a combination of the aforementioned Microsoft mail server attacks, previously unknown vulnerabilities in the now outdated web browser Internet Explorer, and an exceptionally widespread email phishing campaign, members of APT31 targeted journalists, members of the military, and politicians from both main parties, along with their families. The reason? Well, that was primarily to gain insight into these individuals' particular views on China in order to provide Beijing with better insight as to how future international opinion might change on such things as trade tariffs, intellectual property disputes, or any number of other things that might make the political stage difficult for the communist country. In addition to providing advance warning, such wide-ranging system control could very easily be used to manipulate an election in much the same way that Russian hackers attempted to do so in 2016. Now, to be clear, the current charges being brought by the Department of Justice are not claiming that this happened, just that the amount of data collected and systems compromised had made it a possibility. As we previously mentioned, these concerns and retaliatory actions are not limited to the United States. In the UK, a similar digital espionage campaign, or perhaps an extension of the one that took place in the US, has recently been reported. The National Cybersecurity Center, a branch of GCHQ, has accused the Chinese hackers of 2 serious cyber attacks and placed sanctions on several individuals and one company. The first of these was almost exactly the same as the email phishing attack used in the United States and was presumably carried out for similar reasons. As in the United States, it was predominantly those who had previously spoken out against China who were targeted. Although the official government line is that this particular attack was unsuccessful, or at least that no useful information was obtained, the same can definitely not be said with regards to the second and arguably much more sinister incident. In August 2021, copies of voter registration databases were stolen from the computer systems of the UK Electoral Commission. These registers contained the personal information of nearly 40 million UK citizens. At this point, you may very well be wondering just exactly why this is more sinister than the security of top government officials being compromised. Well, that really depends on how you choose to look at the situation. In both cases, the security agencies and the Electoral Commission claim that neither attack, in the grand scheme of things, has caused too many problems. Whilst, if you believe the government, and you have to make up your own minds on that, attempts to compromise email accounts were quickly detected. However, the very fact that these vulnerabilities were available for exploitation in the first place brings into question the competence of those whose job it is to protect sensitive information. As for the attack on the Electoral Commission, not only does losing the personal information of 40 million citizens further drive home the previous point, but we would argue that the situation is even worse than that. In spite of its plethora of political failings, the UK has, by and large, never encountered much controversy when it comes to general elections. The idea that an election could be tampered with has never, to the best of our knowledge, been given much, if any, credence. However, these security issues have been both exploited and widely reported on, so seeds of doubt have started to spread among voters. Whereas suggesting that the election might be rigged would have previously got you laughed at, there are now people on the internet and appearing on talk shows who are suggesting that this might indeed happen. And therein perhaps lies the true power of these state-funded hacking campaigns. You don't actually need to have the power to rig an election. You just have to be able to convince enough people that it is a possibility, and the situation will snowball from there. The whole world saw what happened in America when some people believed that an election had been rigged. Imagine the disarray that the Chinese government could cause throughout the Western world if the events that took place on January 6th in Washington could not only be repeated in America on a larger scale, but orchestrated in many countries around the world. When looked at from this perspective, what appears to be an inconvenient data breach could have massive, world-changing ramifications.